Alright everyone, so we're going to go over a chapter 4 example today on how to use loops. So the example that we have here says the Vernon Hills Mail Order Company often sends multiple packages per order. For each customer order, print enough mailing labels to use on each of the separate boxes that will be mailed. The mailing labels contain the customer's complete name and address, along with a box number in the form of box 9 of 9. For example, an order that requires 3 boxes produces 3 labels: box 1 of 3, box 2 of 3, and box 3 of 3. Design an application that continuously accepts a customer's title, for example, Mrs., a first name, last name, street address, city, state, zip code, and number of boxes in the order until an appropriate Sentinel value is entered. Produce enough mailing labels for each order. So the first thing that we do, once again, whenever we create a program, is identify what variables we're going to need. So it's pretty easy because we can look right here and it says design an application that continuously accepts a customer's title, for example, Mrs. So we know that we're going to need a title. So we're going to make that a string and a first name, a last name, a street address. Now, a street address you might think is going to be an integer because it uses numbers, but that's not true. Streets also have words in their names typically, so this will also be a string. And then we'll also have one for the city, one for the zip code. Now, zip codes, you also might think can be integers, and they certainly could be, but I think in this case we're also going to make it a string. Now the number of boxes, that's going to be an integer because we know how many boxes we're going to need. Okay, alright. So that should be all of the variables that we need. So now we need to create the logic for it. Now, and a lot of programs will have input, but we're not going to be using input inside of Unity to do that. We're just going to make these all be public variables so that we can modify them in the inspector because it's much easier to do. But what we are going to do is we're going to create a way to find out, how many boxes that we need. So we're going to use a for loop. So we're going to say for, and then we're going to create a Sentinel value. And generally we start off our Sentinel value at 0, but in this case we're going to make it 1. Let's do 1. You'll see why. So we're going to say I is less than the number of boxes. We're going to increase our Sentinel value by 1 each time through our loop. Alright, and then we are going to print this out equal to the number of times of boxes that we have. So we're going to print our title, and then we're going to make a space. Now, you see how I'm putting like a space in these quotation marks? That's because I want to break up the line so it isn't all just squished together. And you'll see what I mean when we get to the actual code. Plus sign there. And this is where it gets a little tricky, so we're going to put our Sentinel value in here, and you'll see why in just a moment. Alright, so what this should in theory do is we will determine how many boxes we're going to have with the number of boxes variable here. And so this loop will go through as many times as we need to until we figure out how many boxes we have. Now another thing I want to do, I want to put a little equal sign here, and you'll see why when we run it. So this should, in theory, print out a string that contains the title of our person, the first name, last name, address, city, state, zip code, the box number that we're on, and the number of boxes that we have. So this should work for our pseudocode for this example. So now if we go to Unity, we can create our script. Oops, we don't want to do that. We'll create our example script here. We'll open up Visual Studio. Bring up Visual Studio so that we can see it. And then we'll copy our pseudocode over to here. And we'll go ahead and paste this in. Now you see that there's a whole bunch of errors, and that's okay, because we're going to, let's fix this. So we'll make this lowercase s's for all of our strings, and lowercase I for integer. And then we'll also need to put semicolons at the end of each of these lines to show that we're done with a particular line of code. Now another thing that we're going to need to do is have a method, our start method, to put all of this into. So we'll take our for loop here, paste it there. Alright. And then we'll have to change our quotation marks because the quotation marks inside of Visual Studio are different from the quotation marks inside of Unity. And you'll also notice that this last name here doesn't have a plus sign in front of it, which it should. Alright. So now if we save this and we go back to Unity, it'll recompile. We're going to put our example script on our game object. Oops, we didn't make these public, so we need to make these values public as well so that we can see them in the inspector. Because if we don't, we're not going to be able to modify them. Alright. There we go, now we can see them. So we're going to say Mr. Michael Anderson, 123 Fake Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 55555, and let's go with 5 boxes. So make sure that we can see our console, and if we play this, this will hopefully print out 5 times. Let's see if it does. And here we go. So as you can see, it's printing out Mr. Michael Anderson, 123 Fake Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 55555. Box 1 of 5, 2 of 5, 3 of 5, 4 of 5, 5 of 5. So let's see why that's happening. So when we start off, move this over so it looks a little neater. So we're getting all of our string information, which you can remember from here, and then our number of boxes. Number of boxes is what we're going to use to control how many times we run through our loop. So we're setting our sentinel value I to 1 because we want to start off at 1. and then we're using less than or equal to the number of boxes because we want our loop to go through as many times as our sentinel value of 5 is. So if we were to change the number of boxes, for instance, to 10, this should loop through 10 different times. If we run it again, we see that it goes through 10 different times. So it's very important when we're creating our code that we use sentinel values in the right way to control how many times we run through our actual loop. So that's how loops work. And don't forget that whenever you want to submit your project, you save your script, close Visual Studio, save your Unity project, close Unity, right-click on your folder, go to Send to Compressed Zipped Folder, and upload that. So that's how you're going to do loops. If you have any questions, feel free to post in the discussion board or email me. I'll talk to you later. Bye.